And hopefully a good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to our first masterclass of 2026. For those who don't know me, I'm Sunny Patel. I'm the National Account Manager for Read in Partnership, and today we are joined by my colleague Connor Natella, who is our Operational Hub Lead for Industry and Policy for the Careers Hub team that work in London. Connor's going to talk through today and go through what's on the piece there about education outreach with government priorities and social value. And I guess what's important is for you as employers, how you can help support with that and obviously get involved where possible if that's something part of your social value perspective. Connor's got a nice little interactive session today. He's going to go through some really detailed slides. I'm sure if there's any questions, still drop it in the chat or feel free to raise your hand at any point to answer any questions. There is going to be a crib sheet that we'll send out post-call. We'll summarise the content of the call as well, which you'll get to read, and then we shall be able to go from there. So without further ado, I'll hand the mic over to Connor, who will take the session from here. Over to you, Connor. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunny, and good to see you, everybody. My name's Connor. I lead on the industry engagement and policy engagement work of the Central London Careers Hub. We're one of 45 careers hubs existing all over England. Pretty much every secondary institution now will be part of their local careers hub, which is really designed to reduce the friction between industry and education. And what I'm going to try and do today a little bit is make the case to you for aligning with your local careers hub, working in parallel and in partnership with the support that they offer. Everything they do is fully government funded. So there are no hidden costs or catches, but they're right at that forefront of what the government's vision is for young people entering the workforce over the next 10 to 15 years. And more crucially, what role do employers and what is the expanded role of employers in the careers advice and guidance that young people at secondary school receive? I'm going to ask you a little bit to reflect on your own work experience during this. So if you could think back, it's maybe a bit longer ago than for some than others. I'll quickly tell you that mine was at my local golf club. I thought it was going to be a nice jolly for a week. I was up at 6 a.m. raking rock hard bunkers for the week. It wasn't that fun, and then I was eventually sacked actually from my work experience for crashing a golf buggy. So there you go. That's that story. I'll tell you more about it if I see you again. But yeah, if you could just have a reflection on, and maybe not just work experience, but the advice and guidance you received at school and college. And if you were to think back to that point, could you have imagined then that you'd be in the role that you are now? And how would that have been different if you'd met your current self and been able to ask questions about the skills that you've had to develop along the way and those early formative careers experiences and what you took out of those and what you'd look for? I think the role of employers in education is absolutely essential and one that's gone under the radar for far too long. I think the model of work experience and the very kind of off-the-shelf model that we've been using is fundamentally broken. It doesn't work for employers. It doesn't work for many learners. It's great if you've got social capital at that age in the family, if you've got connections. But if you're being asked to self-select a placement and you don't have access to that, which many young people across the country do not, it becomes incredibly difficult. So what we're proposing, and the case that I'll make, is that we should radically rethink the role of employers in the education system and radically redefine what work experience actually means in a way that makes it sustainable for employers to engage with. So what we're going to do here is look at the current picture. I'm going to show you some charts. Anybody who's been to any of my sessions before knows I love a bit of data, so I'm going to bombard you with that right at the start, and then we'll go into some of the more policy direction. So where are we moving as a country? What are we being asked to catalyze in the system with our connections and employers currently? We'll talk a little bit about this expanded and redefined version of work experience, which we call modern work experience. And we have a framework that I'd like to take you through on what does this look like when it's done really, really well. And we've seen national pilots conclude relatively recently, actually, on a number of different sort of ways of doing this, which had some really encouraging results, which I will include as a link in the sheet that we send as a follow-up. We'll talk more about the role of employers and what this looks like practically, and I'll give you some signposts to some really good support and resources, much of which can be delivered through whoever your local careers hub is, and of course our team here at the Central London Careers Hub. And I could talk all day about curriculum and assessment reviews and social value notices and public procurement notices and so on. I won't. I will spare you from that. I've tried to condense all of this into 30 minutes, but there is more that we can discuss. So we've got a bit of time at the end of the session for some Q&A. I'm more than happy to take questions throughout, though, if there's things that you want to jump in on, no problem at all. But likewise, my details will be shared if you want to reach out beyond. So I promise you some data. So let's kick off here then. So what is the current data telling us about general career readiness in our schools and colleges? Well, what we're seeing nationally is that essential skills for life and work and that career readiness score pretty much tops out around 2/3. We see a slight difference regionally here in central London, but not significant. So this is not a system that is working for everybody in both of these areas. And this is an incredibly complex picture. Schools are messy places that we ask schools to do a huge amount for our young people. And I think that is a level of ambition we should be proud of as a country. But frankly, schools can't do it all. They need partners to help them and help their learners really get ready for those key transition points and prepare for those next steps more effectively. We understand that sectoral interest is shaped in early careers in key stage 3 predominantly by interaction and engagement with employers. What we see in the data, and this is GCSE level data from Central London that I'm showing you here, and this is sectoral interest taken from our Future Skills questionnaire, of which overall we had 10,000 respondents to last year. So this is a representative data set from across the region. But this is taken from the GCSE age. If I was to show you the year 7 sectoral interest, it would look very different. The year 8 one looks very different from that. We see a lot of fluctuation in learner interest in sectors from year 7 through year 9. It stabilizes around year 10 and doesn't really move much from there. And what's really interesting to that is we can draw parallels between the types of engagement and the types of sectors young people have experienced through meaningful workplace activities, and that word's going to be key for the next half an hour, does have a direct impact on whether young people can see themselves working in that sector in the future or not. So the case for starting early is really important. I think that many of us on this call will be used to going along to the year 10, year 11 careers fair, maybe delivering something in an assembly, both of which have value, and I'm not trying to knock those. But what we see is the gold standard is repeat engagement over time that deepens over time and is more differentiated over time to learners' interests and needs. And all of that should be coordinated at the school level with employers feeding in to it with their expertise. A different data set now. So we looked last year at what's currently happening. Where are we seeing current experiences of the workplace? If we were to take that broad definition rather than work experience, this could be work shadowing, it could be insight day visits, it could be tours, it could be lots of different things. I don't think it will surprise anybody to see that big line in the middle of year 10. We're trying to move away from this. We're trying to say that actually bombarding the entire local industry network with 1 week in year 10 for 5 days is in any way a sustainable offer. And actually, it's just not the most meaningful offer without adequate preparation, without adequate reflection, and without the sequencing required of skills-focused engagement through the school years, embedded within the curriculum and aligned to curriculum learning. We can make any placements that do happen, whether they're a couple of days, whether they're the full 5 days, whatever, in year 10, 11, way more meaningful for those learners if that's coming off the back of a really effective engagement program through key stage 3. And everybody stands to benefit from doing that. We asked what are the barriers to this? Well, the first one careers leaders in schools told us was lack of employers. And this is accurate to their experience. but it's also not true. There are plenty of employers who would love to do more engagement with young people in the education system, but the education system is notoriously hard to engage with, right? Many of us on the call, again, will have had the experience of sending emails week after week and not getting a response. The fact is there's limited resource in schools, there's limited capacity, everything's a yes/no decision often, there's hyper prioritization going on. And we're talking at cross purposes, we're often talking past each other. This is where careers hubs really play their role. Our whole job and where we're at our most useful is reducing that friction. We're already working with these schools on an ongoing basis. We're already having repeat engagement with them. By partnering with the Careers Hub, reflecting and reviewing what your offer is and where your expertise can really make the highest amount of impact, we can then broker those partnerships and relationships with the schools and bring you into it at the right time, significantly cutting down your outreach requirement and the admin associated with it, whilst also giving you the confidence that you are aligned to national best practice and frameworks. The other ones there, students not being ready for an experience, I think that's the highest barrier. And often I think, well, this is what schools are for, is to get them ready for these types of experiences. And again, it makes the case for that key stage 3, earlier engagement. I know that they're a bit further away from the labour market, but if we're serious about closing skills gaps, if we're serious about social mobility, if we're serious about effective transitions into the workplace, I think it's incumbent on us as industry specialists to think earlier and think more long term. And the final one is persistent absenteeism. I will never resist an opportunity to talk about this. It is a national crisis at the moment. 20% of our learners, there or thereabouts, are persistently absent from learning. That is an incredibly complex picture, and there's lots of drivers of that, but it is a real challenge. What we see in schools, and I'm not suggesting that, careers education itself or employer experiences are a silver bullet to this very complex picture, but we do see a lower rate of persistent absence when schools embed aspirational learning through employer experiences in their curriculums. And we're working with our school partners to do just that over the next few years. Final chart, it's not the final chart, second to final chart. This is, I think, is the most arresting statistic that we have at the moment. Optimism in future steps decreases the longer a young person stays in the school environment. And it tops out around 2/3 in year 11. We cannot look at this system, either educators or employers, and say it is working as intended anymore. It is incumbent on a shift. It puts us on notice that actually, if we want to reverse declining youth employment rates, actually we need to start early. We need to include young people in this ever-changing sort of landscape that we work in, because this is what we're trying to avoid. Over 13% of young people, about 1 in 8 young people, are currently not in education, employment, or training post 16. Again, an incredibly complex picture, lots of drivers of this, but we know one of the things that really works is sustained repeated engagement with young people, making their learning much more relevant to them, opening up pathways that they didn't previously understand, investing in skills that the curriculum itself alone cannot do. This is what we're trying to reverse, and this is the key policy driver of everything I'm about to go through in the next section. So that's just the data, and I'll summarize this in the sheet that I'll send. Careers hubs have access to all of the data that I've just shown you there for their local areas. So if you have questions about areas other than central London, the last slide will show you how to get in touch with your local careers hub to get that local picture. So moving then into the government policy direction, I put this slide together back in, I think it was August 2024, so it's slightly out of date, as you can see here, but it's a selection of things from that Labour manifesto at the time, and this is really the root of this government's approach to fixing some of these structural challenges. It talks around SEND inclusion, it talks about bringing through Skills England and an industrial strategy. It talks about change to the growth and skills levy. So a lot of what we're seeing come through now is the delivery on some of these manifesto commitments. Skills England have set out 3 key priorities for their early work: understanding the future workforce through LMI, and I'll talk about that in a moment, simplifying access to skills training, and that is also aligned with the curriculum and assessment review, and mobilizing employers as active co-designers of these pathways and solutions. And that is the bit that I'm trying to make the case on today. I think that employers should no longer be seen as an added extra to a school curriculum or a resource to tap into. They should be seen as active partners shaping local skills offers. Skills England, and I just wanted to chuck this in, I'm going to be very brief here. Skills England have put out, now launched their local skills dashboards. I would strongly encourage anybody interested in this or just interested in data more broadly to access this. It's on the Skills England website. You can drill right down into your local area and look at which skills are emerging, which skills are sort of contributing to growth sectors over the next 10 years. And so on. It's a really rich data source, in addition to the occupational maps, which were previously hosted through iFate. The other thing that came through the Labour manifesto at the time, which caused a wave of kind of uncertainty, let's call it, in the education sector, was the guarantee of 2 weeks worth of work experience for every young person. The key word in there underlined is worth. We are moving away. We're reevaluating, let's say, the model of a 1 week block placement and nothing else. And we're asking the question, is that the best way of doing it? What we want to see is what the statutory guidance asks for. This was updated in May. We want to see that early engagement. We'll see 1 week's worth, and that could be split up depending on capacity in the school, timetabling, learner need, when employers are available. There's a lot of flexibility being brought into the system where it was previously quite rigid. And you'll see the differentiation between the word activities and placements. It's clear that what the government's vision is here is that in those early years, it should be introductory, it should be aspirational, it should be opening up aspirations around your industry and busting myths and stereotypes around potentially your industry. But as young people move through their school career, they should start to develop skills and be able to apply and demonstrate those skills in a workplace environment. So there's a clear differentiation there. What they're not saying is that every young person has to do 1 week's worth of work experience in year 10. They're not saying that that can't happen, but they are saying there is now added flexibility into the system to look at how this is done and take an impact-led approach. We often talk about seeing learners as levers. So by the time that young person has left an institution, what are the knowledge, skills, and behaviours? And perhaps more importantly, what do we want them to know about themselves and their own aspirations by the time they leave the institution? And then comes the question of how can employers really feed into that vision at the school level? There's some additional context here around work experience placements. It does talk about virtual and sort of hybrid. That is to be worked out between the school and the employer. There is a place for virtual engagement. It would be wrong of me to sit here in my house talking to you all through a screen and say that there isn't a place for that, given the way that the modern world of work is moving. But it shouldn't be in place of, just because it's easier for us to deliver that in-person activity. We know that's the gold standard. It's being in there, being able to physically experience what being at work is like. For a long time, we've talked in careers education about making experiences meaningful. There is now, and it's been one of those kind of public sector civil service words, to be honest, where it's quite opaque and it can mean different things to lots of different people. There is now a very clear definition. This is taken from the updated Gatsby benchmark framework, which is an internationally recognized now framework of excellence in careers provision, which was updated for the first time in 10 years just last year. And what we're asking employers to do through support with their careers hub is look at what their current education outreach looks like, or what their ambition for education outreach might look like, and run it through these tests. Schools are also being asked to do the same. What is their current careers provision? Does it meet this criteria? And this should contribute to a shared language, we feel, over the next decade between industry and education in terms of what are we actually trying to do here? What is the purpose? Why are we engaging? And what is the impact? So I want to move into social value then. So for a long time, education outreach within social value has consisted for many employers, and this is not knocking those employers whatsoever, as having a stall at a careers fair and ticking everybody who comes and takes a pen. And because of this additional flexibility, because of the additional vision that's been set out for work experience, I think this gives a golden, once in a kind of generation opportunity for employers to look at their engagement with education, look at what are the business benefits that brings in terms of bringing down recruitment costs, setting up talent pipelines, but also recognizing that social value impact all as one conversation. If you're going to spend the time standing at a careers fair for 2 hours, you may as well go the extra mile and make it more meaningful. There is a tangible business benefit to this. The updated social value model in October 25 does require bidders to provide the measurable time-bound commitments that contribute to policy outcomes. A lot of what I'll talk about here, because of the geographic spread of the audience, will be around central government procurement, but I do have an example of one that we've worked on recently with one of our local authorities. So you'll be asked to talk about method statements. You'll be asked to talk about KPIs. What I've put in here, and this is quite basic, I know, but what I've put in here is just a basic look at where we as a careers hub will really be able to support with this. So everything in that method statement there is something that a careers hub will be able to support with. Every one of those KPIs we would be able to report back to you on if your staff were engaged in a volunteering program, for example, with local schools and colleges, which went beyond just one partnership, but actually had a broader impact. This is quite useful for those, for example, with supply chains who are writing social value KPIs into those supply chains. Careers hubs are uniquely positioned because they have the ear of the schools and the capacity in the careers hubs to manage those volunteer programs to help you report against KPIs such as this. I would encourage employers who are seeking public procurement tenders to engage with their careers hub up front to help shape that tender, understand what is the capacity there, what would the requirements be, and make that robust and clear. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this. I'm just going to focus in on, I put this into the briefing note straight afterwards. But when we're talking about bid narratives in social value, again, we're trying to feed those sort of more targeted KPIs and targets into there. So I've just highlighted here 120 per hours per year of employer-led engagement. Great. Well, that's really great for your local careers hub to know. They will work to that target. They will make sure that there is the opportunity to fulfill that. It talks around students eligible for free school meals. We have that information. We know who those students will be, and we'll be able to find out. We talk about 20 trained staff volunteers. Careers hubs are able to deliver in-house staff training to those who would potentially be doing that education outreach, either in the school or on the premises. That co-design with school leaders speaks to a crucial tenet of the vision from government around partnerships that last and are not defined by reactive ad hoc opportunity or delivery, but are actually part of more strategic partnerships over time, designed to lower skills gaps, raise aspirations, and so on, which it talks about towards the end there. So again, I've included this in case useful. But to see this really in action and sort of bring it to life a little bit, this is an example of a delivery plan that we've worked on recently with an employer successful in a tender with Haringey Borough Council. And what we're looking to do here, and I'll talk about EqualX in a moment, what we're looking to do is align, well, what's the activity? Well, an employer insight visit, relatively straightforward to set up. There's clear learning objectives around that. There's some good templates that we can use. It's part of our theme of introducing and inspiring. The procurement expectation from the local authority is around engagement with young people and how we are able to support that measurement and that progress is by reporting back on the number of hours your staff have delivered and the number of learners that they've been able to reach. And as we move through the age groups and we get more towards that applying and demonstrating area of what we're about, it might be that there's a 2-day work experience program and you have a particular focus on care experience learners like this employer did. Well, that fits the procurement expectation around targeted support for underrepresented groups, but we're actually able to report on more there. We can talk about the number of staff engaged, internal staff, that would be the number of disadvantaged learners reached who qualify for that. So I've made the case for why there's benefit to you as a business in education outreach and why Careers Hubs should be a vehicle for you to exploit to do that. This is how we go about it at the Careers Hub level. So we want to come away slightly from that block placement as standard and look at it more as a progressive program of workplace experiences with 3 key themes that introduce and inspire, investigate and explore, and apply and demonstrate. And they blend through a young person's school experience. There's a great line in the statutory guidance that every activity, a careers-based activity a young person experiences at school should build on previous learning and look forward to the next. And that's currently not happening at scale. And it is something that we are absolutely committed to seeing happen in the system. And employers have a role to play at each stage along there without needing to take on the whole operational complexity of changing that system around. We're just asking employers to play their part. One of the key things that we're seeing in the system change here is around the introduction of learning outcomes. I think for too long, employers who have been engaging with education outreach and have been trying to do their best to make that as impact-driven and meaningful as possible, of which there are many thousands in this country, have been slightly shortchanged by the fact that for them, it might be one thing, and for the school, it might be a different purpose. What we want to see is a shared learning objective, a learning outcome for each activity set by the institution, co-designed potentially with the employer. So there is a common objective to why we're doing that engagement. It's not just to fulfill social value criteria. It's going beyond that to recognizing impact over the long term, which you will have more access to be able to show if we're able to set up partnerships that go beyond just the day of delivery. To measure this and to look at, well, what does quality look like for employers in this work? The CEC, who are the national body for careers education, a couple of years ago have developed a national framework, and thousands of employers have now completed this across the country. And they looked at what are the kind of key areas of quality that we want to drive with our employers who are engaging in this space. And this is what the framework that they've come up with. Now, this takes the form of an online self-assessment. It's called Employer Standards. The link to this will be in the follow-up page that I share. But this is as good a jumping off point as any for any employer who has potentially been working on education outreach things for years and years and years, and might open up some new avenues of thinking after all that experience. Or somebody who's listening to me talking and saying, well, it's quite interesting. I'd like to do a bit more of that. And maybe that is something we can include in our business strategy moving forwards. This gives you a really good framework for where do you want to start? Because that's often the biggest hurdle. Karen's on the call. Karen, in my team, we talk about this all the time. The biggest hurdle that we often hear from employers is it's just getting started. It's knowing where to begin. And this is as good a place as any. So I'll finish then. I want to leave time for questions and answers on some of the things we do here in central London to support employers along that journey. The flagship initiative that we have is our Equal Ex-Employer Charter. Any employer working or seeking to engage with education in central London, I'd strongly encourage signing up to the Charter. What that does is allocate a member of my team to be your lead sort of account lead, who will consult with you over time, not setting really sort of stringent goals and targets up front, but looking over time to develop a way of doing education outreach that is in alignment with your business objectives, your values, and your aims in that. It gives you full access to all the the Careers Hub network here in central London, over 250 institutions, access to over 230,000 learners. I'm not expecting everybody to engage with every one of those, but that's fine. And really, it's just that support throughout the next however long you're a part of this. The commitment to it is 1 day a year of actual activity. So it might be that there's some co-design of what that activity looks like, some relationship brokering with local schools or colleges, some maybe in-house staff training. All of that can be done over the first 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and then that day of delivery, that really high impact sort of policy aligned delivery. We want to make sure inclusion is written not as an addition to our work, but right at the heart of it. Some of the schools, some of the mainstream settings that we work with, up to 50% of their learners have some kind of additional need to consider. That can be quite daunting for employers who have not engaged with that audience in the past. We do have resource, we do have expertise here at the Careers Hub. We will work with you to make sure, and this is the same for any Careers Hub, frankly, they will work with you to make sure that your staff are prepared and your resources are appropriate to the needs of the learners that you'll be engaging with. And that continuous improvement piece. So this is absolutely the order of the day that we're getting from all of our funders. That's what they want to see. They're not expecting Rome to be built in a day. They are expecting progress to be clear over time, and for the level of kind of practice and impact to rise over time. And the annual completion of the employer standards actively captures that, but also is a driver of that. In terms of what the charter gives you, as I've mentioned, you get that dedicated person supporting your outreach development. You get access to a quality mark to show that your business, that your organization is aligned to this national movement that we're on. In addition, your organization can be displayed on the website to show the education system, but also other stakeholders that are important to your social value strategy, that you are fully aligned with the Department for Education's mission to deliver this work experience guarantee over the coming years. Some other things, then these are things that are standard practice in any Careers Hub. That last one was very much a central London invention, but enterprise advisors exist everywhere. If you're an individual who's really passionate about this and actually wants to support strategically, support structurally within school environments to make sure that the things that we know need to be in place, the conditions for success are set. There's senior leadership buy-in, there's governor approval, there's parent engagement, teacher engagement, curriculum alignment. Well, there's so many things that an enterprise advisor coming from a business background, working with school leaders, not necessarily directly learner facing, to really shape what the structure of careers provision is in schools and how it fits within the leadership of schools can do. Enterprise advisors, again, there's a link to our website on this, so there's much more detail. This is something that larger businesses often look to share with their staff teams, as many businesses now have volunteering days, for example, or development needs, development programs internally and so on. And this fits quite well and has been designed to fit quite well with that. And finally, all hubs will also be delivering teacher encounters. So we recognise that a lot of the people delivering advice and guidance about your sector have never worked in your sector. They are teachers. This is a generalisation, they do a very good job in what they do, but they've typically gone from school to university and back to school. So if they're the person delivering advice around working in a digital startup or a construction site or whatever it might be, it's always going to be slightly from an uninformed start point, however much research they're able to do given the time that they have to do it. So teacher encounters are relatively newer, but it's essentially work experience for teachers. And through teacher encounters, you co-design curriculum-based resources that actually take real-world skills from the workplace and embed them into curriculum learning, thereby having a much broader impact than you would be able to have when you're only able to see 20, 30 learners perhaps at a time. It also has the impact of joining together the local industry and education networks much more closely. And we see Teacher Encounters here in Central London as a really important part of the partnership that we're trying to develop between employers and their local education system. So it shouldn't be seen as a kind of one-off. We've gone and done a teacher encounter. Even though there is value in just doing that, it should be seen as part of a wider approach to more joined up working locally. So I'll leave you on this, and I've got 10 minutes left. I've actually kept to time. That never happens, as Sonny and Karen will attest to. So I'll leave you on this. These are just take screenshots from the careers and enterprise companies website. So there is the resource directory for employers that's packed full of templates and frameworks and interesting things for you to dig through. Again, your Careers Hub will be able to help you navigate some of that and point you to the ones that are most relevant for you. And you can find your local Careers Hub again by going to the CEC website, clicking on that button that says Careers Hubs, putting in your postcode, and it will direct you to your most local contact. I hope that was useful. I think that I've sort of covered surface level on a few things there. So that was as much as I had time to do today. Happy to take any questions for the next 7 minutes or so, but I'll make sure my details are included on the follow-up message as well if you have any further ones. But thank you for being here today.
Great, thank you, Connor. I really appreciate the comprehensive overview for everyone to digest that this afternoon. Firstly, are there any questions for anyone in the audience? I don't see anything in the chat, so I think that's.
That's either very good, Sonny, or very bad.
Hope it's the former. Very good. But yeah, we've got some hand claps there. Thank you, everyone. Look, as Connor mentioned, there's a lot to digest, and I appreciate some of you. Thank you, Katerina. Have obviously maybe something you to embed within your current roles and your current businesses. Certainly, if there's anything else you want from this, then by all means, Connor, as you mentioned, is happy to share his contact details. When I send you all out the summary from this, I'll attach Connor's crib sheet and contact details as well. And then any questions from that, please do let me know. I will also send a short survey, so feel free to complete that. We always welcome feedback here at Reading Partnership. I know Connor welcomes that as well. So anything you want to share on that, please do share that on that document as well. And I know we're in the final stages of actually finalising our next 6 months of masterclasses. Just bear with me. I'll get that all out to you hopefully by the end of next week or the first week of February. It's on record. It's been recorded, so that's great.
Yeah.
And that will outline every event we've got between February and July. And hopefully some of those events or themes will resonate with some of you, and you're more than welcome to attend. And by all means, do invite your colleagues to attend also. So lovely to see everyone. If there's no other final questions from anyone, I shall let you all go. Thank you, Connor, for your delivery. Really appreciate you supporting this particular topic in your expert field. But everyone have a great rest of the week. We shall see you all soon, and also have a great weekend when it arrives. Thank you all. Take care.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sonny.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye.